Hey, how's it going, everyone? It's Lee Halliday, and today we are going to learn about mocking our APIs in a development environment, and we're going to do that with Mock Service Worker. Now, I've done another video showing how to use Mock Service Worker with testing, but we're not testing this time. We're doing development, and maybe we don't have our API endpoints ready yet. Maybe there's another team working on them, so we can use this to basically fake them out and not let it hold us back developing our front end. So what we're going to do is basically get started by creating a brand new Next.js application. So I'm in my console and I'm just going to say yarn create next app, and we'll call this MSW mocked API. So we'll just wait for this to install and then we'll install the packages that we need. Okay, so with Next installed, we're going to go into that folder, and then we're going to add two packages. So we're going to be adding Mock Service Worker, which is MSW, and also SWR, Stale While Revalidate, to basically help us make those API requests on the front end in the client. So we're going to install that. Okay, so once MSW and SWR are installed, we need to initialize Mock Service Worker. And this tripped me up a little bit because I didn't see it in some of the examples, but we can do that using npx MSW init. So many acronyms mess me up. So when we try this, it's going to ask basically, where do you want us to initialize the folders or the files that it needs? So we're going to do that in public, because that's where sort of all of the static stuff goes inside of Next.js. So if we were to open up our code base right now, I'll just show you what has been created. So in our package.json, we've got MSW installed, we got Stale While Revalidate installed, and there's some MSW set up here that says basically where is the service worker going to be installed in the public folder. So if you were to go inside of public here, you see this file, mock service worker. It needs this, and you're going to get an error if it can't find this. It's basically the code that installs the service worker in whatever environment you're working in. But you never need to touch this file. It's just needed for this to work properly. So we're going to go inside of pages, inside of index, and we're just going to rip everything out. So you can just do this, and maybe we just want to put a UL for now. That's it. If you want, you can put one LI, but it will be empty, and then you can delete everything else here. So our goal on the homepage is to basically list some coins, some crypto tokens, some symbols. So what we're going to do is basically make a request using SWR to an endpoint that we're going to eventually mock out to get a list of these coins to display. So for that, we're going to import use SWR from SWR. And then what we're going to do inside of our component here is we're going to say const data and an error is equal to use SWR. And with that, you need to give it some sort of key so that it knows sort of one request from another one. So we're just going to call this coins. And then you have to pass it a function to basically go and load that data. So we're going to create one called getCoins. So we can do this here. We can say function getCoins. And we need to return, and we're going to make a fetch call to /coins. And then the response will give us the JSON. And that's pretty much all we need to do here. And then we come down and we basically handle when it's in an error state and when it's loading. So we'll say if there's an error, we're going to return just a span that says error. And if there's no data, we'll return a span that says loading. And if we get down here at this point, we can sort of assume that it worked. And why don't we just, for that, why don't we JSON.stringify the data inside of this LI like that so that we can see what we're working with. So let's start our app, and we'll say yarn dev to get this up and running. And we'll go to the browser here. So if I were to refresh the page, what we're going to see as soon as this thing sort of initializes is we get an error. So why do we have an error? Because this endpoint doesn't exist. So if we were to just, oh boy, get rid of this, look at our coins. So it's a 404, so it can't find this thing. So now we're going to go and we're basically going to create a fake version of this endpoint using mock service worker. Hey, I just wanted to mention my course, Next Level Next.js, which you can pick up from next.leehalliday.com if you want to show your support to this channel, or you want to learn some new techniques with Next.js, where we build a full stack application covering the front end and the back end, covering GraphQL, TypeScript, Prisma, using maps. It's a whole lot of different technologies in 8+ hours of content, 29 videos. You can pick it up for $49 or click this purchasing power parity to get a bit cheaper price depending where you're from. Please check it out. Thanks. So mock service worker needs to be sort of initialized in a central place. So yes, we could put it here in this index file, but then it would only be available on that page. So I'm going to do this inside of the _app file, which is global on Next.js. It's sort of something that's called and is wrapped around every page. So in here, what we're going to do is we're going to require ... mocks like this. So this folder doesn't exist yet. We're going to go create it in a second. But I don't want to always use the mocks because in production, for example, I don't want to use them. Maybe locally even, I don't want to always use them. Maybe sometimes I want to use the real endpoints. So what we can do here is we're just going to check to see if the value of an environment variable is equal to enabled. So we're going to say if process.env.next public API mocking is equal to enabled. We're only going to require the mocks if that's the case. And that's why I did sort of a dynamic require rather than importing at the top, because I only sort of want to conditionally go and import this code here. So we obviously need to set up this environment variable. I'm going to do that in .env.development, which will only be loaded in the development environment. And I'm going to say that this is equal to enabled. So whenever you add or modify your environment variables, you need to reboot the app. So that's why I'm just going to come back here. And you can see here it loaded env from that new file I just created. But we still have the error because this doesn't exist yet. So let's go create it. So new folder, mocks. Inside of mocks, we're going to have index.js. And this file here, because we're using Next.js, it needs to handle both in the browser and on the server. So we need to be able to differentiate between them because mock service worker uses sort of different mocking mechanisms depending where you're running. In the browser, it uses a service worker to intercept the request. And in Node on the server, I believe it sort of overrides fetch and sort of intercepts things that way, but I'm not entirely sure. Anyways, so to check whether we're on the browser, we're going to say if type of window is not equal to undefined, that means we're in the browser basically. And what we can do here is we are going to bring in a worker we're going to bring it in from the browser code here. And with the worker, we're going to basically tell it to start. So we're in the browser, we're saying service worker, start intercepting the requests. So we need to go inside of here now and create a browser.js file. And here we're going to set up mock service worker. So we're going to import setup worker from MSW. And then we're going to import our handlers from a file that doesn't exist yet, handlers. And I'll talk about what handlers are in a second. Basically, each handler represents one API endpoint to mock. So we're going to export our worker, calling setup worker, passing in the spreaded handlers. So it's going to be exported here as an array, and then we're going to spread that array into the setup worker function. So that's all that's in this file. It's pretty straightforward. So now we can go inside of handlers.js. And in here, we're going to import just one thing called REST from mock service worker. So mock service worker can mock both REST calls and GraphQL calls. So here we're just importing the REST ones. And I'm just going to set up some data that will be used inside of the two mocks that we'll be creating. So these are the coins, and it will be equal to, basically we're going to include two coins. We're going to have Cardano, which is ADA token, Cardano, and its website is https://cardano.org, like that. And our next coin will be DOT. So this will be Polkadot, and its website is https://polkadot.network. Cool. So those are the sort of data we're going to be including in our mocks. And now we need to export the handlers, which are going to be an array where each one represents one sort of endpoint to mock out. So the way you mock out an endpoint is you use this REST that we imported here, and we can say we want to mock out a GET request as opposed to like POST or PUT or whatever here. So the endpoint we're mocking out is /coins. So whenever you see that request, basically don't actually go out on the internet and do it. Instead, I'm going to tell you what to respond with. So the second thing we pass here is an arrow function that will receive info about the request, the response, and context. I messed up something. Boom, 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 boom. Is that right? I think so. No. Boom. Okay. So inside of here, what we need to do is basically return a response. What's the browser going to receive as the fake response? And the way we sort of build up the response is using this context. So context can set things like the status. So we could set the status of 200. You don't have to do 200 because that's automatic, just to sort of show you how this works with multiple. Maybe we want to imitate a delayed response. It's a little bit slow. We can say here context.delay of say 500 milliseconds. And then we can give the JSON response that is going to be actually sent to the browser. So what we're going to do here is basically just convert this object into an array of coins. So here we will say object.entries of coins, and then we're going to map that where an arrow function. And each one of these, it basically gives us the key here, so the symbol, and then the rest of the data for that coin. So we are going to return an object that will have the symbol in it and whatever is in the data. So we're ending up with an array that basically, an array of objects where it's this data plus the symbol of ADA. Okay, so we've set up our handler. We can now basically go back to our home page that we are working on, and we can see if it has data to work with. So if I refresh the page, it's loading for a second, because remember that we added in that 500 millisecond delay, but then we get the actual response. So if I go and I look at the coins endpoint, it's going to look like it was an actual request, but here on the status code you can see from service worker. So it actually didn't go out on the internet. It got intercepted by our MSW service worker, and the response it got back was this array of coins where symbol ADA, name Cardano, etc. And the cool thing, if you go into console, here it gives you a little message that mocking is enabled, and it also shows you each request that it's making, along with sort of the status, the delay, the body, things like that. So that's pretty useful if you go inside of the console here. So we're just going to basically finish out this page really quickly. So we're going to import link from next link, and then we're going to replace this where we're going to iterate basically over the data. So map it. Each one represents a coin, and each one will be a list item inside of our UL. So the key will be the coin.symbol, and then inside of here we're going to have a link with an href that takes us to /coins and then the symbol. So coin.symbol, and then in here we'll just put the coin.name like that. So if we were to come back here, now we have a link to /coin/ADA, and then /coin/dot. If we don't want it uppercase, the symbol, we could just add, two downcase? No, it's to two lowercase. There we go. Okay, so if I click on Cardano, it brings me to this page, /coin/ADA. This doesn't exist yet, but we're going to go create it. But this time we're not going to do it sort of in the browser. We're going to do completely server rendered, which means we'll handle mocking in a slightly different way. So first we need to create this page that we sent the user to. So we're going to, inside of pages here, you can delete the API. We're not using this at all. So we're going to create a new folder called coins. And then inside of coins, we need a file. And because this is dynamic, it could be ADA, it could be DOT, it could be ETH, BTC, whatever, we need to create a dynamic file name. So we do that with square brackets symbol.js. And then in here we can create our component that we're going to have. So export default function, call this the coin. And for now, we're just going to put an H1 that says coin. So if I were to refresh this now, it should say coin. But our goal right now is to basically load the coins data on the server. So we're going to export a function. We can export async function get server side props. And in here, we want to receive the query. So what is the query? It's basically any query params that were sent to this URL, one of which being what symbol was actually sent, because this is dynamic. So what we can do in here is basically use the query to get the symbol. So we'll say const symbol is equal to query.symbol, and we'll say to uppercase. So we'll put it in the right case. And then what we can do is make a request to a fake endpoint that doesn't exist, but we will set up mock service worker to intercept it. So what we're going to do is we're going to say const response, and that is equal to, we're going to make a fetch call to say some fake website, https coins.com/, and then we'll just embed in here our symbol like that. And this should have been a wait because it gives us a promise back. So what I'm going to do is I want to check the response of the server, because what if it responded with a 404 or something like that? So if response.status is equal to 404, we're going to basically tell the response from the server to go redirect back to the home page. So we're going to return an object that says redirect, and we will redirect it to, first of all, it's permanent. We'll say false, and then I think its destination will be the home page. So unless I'm mistaken, this is how you basically return a redirect from server-side props in Next.js. So if we get down here, we basically have the data. So we're going to say const data is await response converted to JSON. And then we want to return this, basically pass this data as a prop to our component. So we're going to say, here's the props, and the coin will be whatever is inside of this data here. Okay, so before we even go and implement this component, we need to mock out a call to this endpoint. So I'm going to just keep that in mind, that what this URL looks like. And I'm going to go back to app. So remember, we require our mocks, which would be the index of this folder. And up to this point, we only handled basically when it's in the browser. So we're going to add an else. And inside of this else, what we're going to do is basically set up a server. So we're going to import that from ./server, which doesn't exist. And then we'll tell the server to listen. So I sort of wish they used the same function call. Basically in the browser it's start, on the server it's listen, but you're going to see that they're very similar. So we need to go create server.js, and inside of server.js we need to import setup server from msw/node, and then we're also going to import our handlers from /handlers. And the cool thing is we don't have to change the handlers at all, client versus server, but we will add a new one. So now we export our worker, which is setup server, spreading out our handlers. Oops, this wouldn't be worker then, it would be server. So export the server, call the setup server with the handlers. Perfect. So going into handlers, we are going to add a second one to our array of handlers. So what we're going to do is we're going to say rest.get, but this time we'll put in a full URL. So we'll say https ://coin, what did I say? Coins.com, back to server, no, handlers, yeah. Coins.com and then slash, and here we can put in sort of a placeholder, so colon symbol, because that part of the request is going to be dynamic. So now we have our arrow function, and this will receive the request, the response, and the context. And then what we're going to do first of all is just let's make sure that our symbol is uppercase, because we don't, maybe they'll pass it lower or whatnot. So we'll say symbol is equal to, and how do we get the actual value here, like ADA or dot or whatever? What we do is we say rec.params, and then we can access the symbol, and we're going to convert it to uppercase. Now we'll use that symbol to basically try and load our coin data from this little object we set up here. So it's data is equal to symbol coins at symbol. Okay, so what if they sent us a symbol that doesn't exist? What we'll say is if type of data is equal to undefined. What we're going to do here is return a response where we basically set the status to 404. So we already handled that on the client, not on the client, but in this function here. Basically, if the server returns us a 404, redirect the user to the home page. So now we've basically set up our handler to also handle responding in different ways depending on what the symbol is that was passed here. And then once we get here, what I want to basically do is return a response, and I'm going to just return the context JSON of the data, but I want to basically spread in the symbol and then the rest of the coin data like that. Cool. So if I were to come back here to here, we could console.log what the data looks like. So if we refresh here, remember this happens on the server, so we come down here and we can see here that it's giving us symbol of ADA, Cardano, and then the website. We've already passed this as a coin prop, so we can come back here and we can say we're going to receive coin as a prop, and maybe we'll put this whole thing in a div. And then in our h1 we'll say coin.name and then maybe coin.symbol. And then below the h1 we'll do a p that has a link in it to the coin.website. And then maybe we'll just output the coin.website here. So refresh. Now we have a server rendered mocking data from a fake endpoint. We could go back to the home page and we could click into Polkadot, and you can see here we're mocking out dynamic data using the symbol that was passed in. And if we go to one that doesn't exist, like BTC, it's going to just redirect us back to the home page, which we handled. So that's how you can use mock service worker to mock out requests, both that happen on the client in the browser using the service worker approach, but also when it happens on the server side, such as is the case with anything that happens inside of get server side props. We can mock out things there as well. And it's handled in sort of a very similar way where we basically check what environment we're in, and we can set up our either worker or our server to listen and intercept those requests using a standard set of handlers. But I also showed that these handlers can contain unique sort of dynamic components to the data. For example, you can capture what symbol was passed into the URL, and you can load some fake data depending on that symbol, or you can handle different responses like 404 for when the data is undefined. Okay, that's it for today. Hope you enjoyed the video. Take care.